Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you being here, and we hope that everybody is well and safe. So today we are going to show you some tips and tricks on how to maximize the value of your business automation investments. A couple of things before we get started. We will have some time to take questions after the main presentation. So if you look over in your GoToWebinar console, there's a little questions area where you can type in questions. So as we're going through, feel free to type in those questions and we will get to them at the end. And then everybody who attends the session will also receive a replay via email of the session so that you will have this recording. Likely we will send it out tomorrow, so just keep an eye on your inbox for that. And with that, I'm going to actually present or introduce our presenters today. So first we have Chris Stinkler. He's our General Manager of the Business Automation Group here at Enverus. So he's going to give you a brief introduction. Then we'll have Dave Savell. He's our General Manager of the OpenTicket platform. We've got Don Hofer. He's a Solutions Director, and he's going to provide some input on Pricebook, as well as some OpenInvoice information. Then we're going to hear from Jeff White, our VP of Services. He's going to introduce you to the virtual admin service that we have that can help you out. And then we're going to go to Tamara Roberts-Roach. She's our Product Manager, and she's going to introduce you to Virtual Card. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
All right. Thank you. I'll see if I can actually turn my camera on and we'll try to do some interaction. But I want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. Definitely some crazy times in the industry. This industry is no stranger to down markets and you know, the ups and downs, and definitely the swings of energy and oil and gas volatility. This time's a little bit different. You know, we absolutely, with the double black swan of COVID-19 and what's happening in the commodities, what we're doing with Enverus Business Automation, this is why we wanted to have this webinar today, is we're looking at things that we can do to help you. Most of what you find, most of what you're going to hear today from our team is already within your implementation or within your solution set, so it requires no implementation. But we're going to talk about things like social distancing with OpenTicket. We're already hearing from suppliers and operators how they're actually ramping that up to actually leverage it to actually minimize some of that interaction, but still get a lot of the rich data coming from those tickets, and enhancing workflow automation and invoice approvals and enhancing price books. And virtual admin Jeff White and his team has done an amazing job taking our team and really partnering with customers to be an extension of your team. And then finally, you're going to hear from Tamara about virtual cards, what we're doing with the payments. We're actually really enhancing our entire payment solution and launching things like virtual cards. We've had 23 companies just in the last 30 to 45 days engage us, asking us about how to leverage virtual cards. And so we're uniquely suited to do that. And we've got a great partner and able to work with CSI and MasterCard and Visa. So we're excited about you joining us today. You're going to continue to hear more from us throughout the coming months ahead, how we continue to partner with you. And we truly do want to partner with you as we all seek to get through this together. So if you have questions, raise your hand, engage us. We're here for you. And I just want to tell each of you, thank you for what you do, and thank you for your business and allowing us to serve you. Dave, I think if you're on, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Yeah, I appreciate that introduction. So the focus of the first section here is on social distancing. So we'll take a look at the history of business automation. So back to the 1990s, when you think back to when really we first started this digital journey, in the 1990s, the process for generating a field ticketed invoice on the supplier side, the coding, routing, pricing verification, and ultimate loading into the ERP on the operator side was all manual. So the process itself could take weeks or potentially even months. So back about 2000, when the whole .com boom took off, a lot of new technologies were introduced. And by 2010, OpenInvoice and Pricebook, two of Enverus's products, were really introduced or stood out as the de facto standard associated with digital processing of invoices. So we were able to digitally generate the invoice on the supplier side. send that and have the invoice coded and routed. The pricing was verified through Pricebook. The invoice was approved, and we actually digitally loaded it up to the ERP. So that was great. We actually streamlined a lot of processes and took that potentially multi-month process down to a matter of weeks. But we still had this paper field ticket in the process. So the generation and approval for the field ticket was all manual. The verification on the field ticket on the operator side, either out of the job site, out of the rig site, or within the regional office, was all done manually. And with the introduction of digital field ticketing solutions, and in particular OpenTicket, OpenInvoice plus Pricebook plus OpenTicket allows us to completely digitize that process. So the generation and approval for the field ticket and the invoice generation with that backup is all done digitally on the supplier side. The coding, routing, the pricing verification, invoice approval, and loading to the ERP is all digital. So what you have is really end-to-end a complete digital process. And if you wanted to, based on a field ticket authorization, the delegation of authority of that field ticket approver was accurate, you would have no reason to do anything else but say, yes, we can go ahead and pay the invoices associated with that field ticket. Next slide now. So how does OpenTicket work? It's a cloud-based collaborative platform for operators and service providers to generate, review, and approve digital field tickets. What you see on the right-hand side here is a very rudimentary workflow process. Essentially, the operator places an order for a good or service out at a well site, or potentially out at a gathering plant, or some place where they operate. The service provider provides resources. Field ticket is generated, and that field ticket is actually approved by the operator's company man, either right at the site or after the process. That approved field ticket is then used to support the creation of the invoice. The invoice is processed, and payment is ultimately made. So what OpenTicket is essentially digitizing that field ticket creation on the supplier side and the approval on the operator side. And Don, if we move forward a little bit to see how that ties into the digital invoicing process. So that green oblong is basically OpenInvoice. So you see how OpenTicket and OpenInvoice tie in with each other, and both are also impacted by Pricebook. So we have a complete ecosystem of digital generation and approval of the field ticket and invoice process. So the OpenTicket Trends, OpenTicket has been on the market for coming close to 4 years now, but we've really seen a significant uptake in usage over the past 12 months. So we processed over 2 million invoices throughout the OpenTicket system, almost 6.2 billion in spend. And we now have over 4,000 suppliers as of the end of March on our network. So we've seen a lot of growth, far and away the largest ticketing solution in the industry today. But what's really interesting, what we've seen is the weekly OpenTicket supplier onboarding, really since, frankly, the COVID crisis happened, as we've seen a significant number of new OpenTicket supplier connections. So our typical average would be on a weekly basis between 40 to 50. Towards the new year started edging up, but now we're seeing an excess of 150, close to 160 supplier connections weekly. And this is really being driven by this need for social distancing, and we'll talk a little bit about that, more about that later. But it is interesting with all this volume is finding out what we've learned. And we found that high volume, low value services had very unique challenges. So we developed something called SuperTix, and this supports water hauling, contract labor, and other high volume activities, making it very easy to review, approve, code, dispute a high volume of tickets in a very short time. We also found that field ticket validation and authorization was often a more complex process than we had thought. So we introduced multi-step review and approval processes within the field ticket world. And then finally, and this wasn't a surprise, operators and suppliers want a more collaborative process. So now these suppliers can actually code field tickets themselves, and also there's support for something called custom ticket types. So the standard OpenTicket application has 3 basic ticket types: general, labor, equipment, and material and hauling. And with the custom ticket type now, individual operators and even individual suppliers can work with the operator to come up with custom ticket types to better suit some very unique aspects of their business. Now, let's turn to Pricebook. Currently, we have 75 companies using Pricebook. And over the last 12 months, there is almost $1.2 billion worth of spend that was evaluated through Pricebook. But what's really interesting is last year we introduced something called the collaborative Pricebook, where essentially what can happen is a supplier can provide the information related to a Pricebook, and the operator in turn can review that and ultimately authorize that Pricebook. And essentially what that did was it took a lot of the challenges related to, frankly, the burden of all the administrative overhead off of the operator and let the operator and supplier share it. Because honestly, there's actually benefit for both sides. So currently we have 688 separate contracts that are under collaborative Pricebook. We'll talk a little bit what we learned within Pricebook too. Is that early versions of the OpenInvoice Pricebook were very labor intensive. So contract pricing often changed too quickly for timely updates. Secondly, suppliers had no visibility into the final contract. So this led to a lot of confusion when the suppliers generated invoices. And operators and suppliers wanted a more collaborative process. So this could help provide visibility to suppliers and leverage administrative work that frankly the suppliers were doing anyway. So we learned a lot about ticket, we learned a lot about Pricebook, and in turn that's really manifested itself into how you can use that technology today. And that is really the digitization of the overall process. And this provides support for social distancing. So contracts and tickets are processed and approved digitally. There's no need for physical meetings to sign off on ticket runs. So the idea that there has to be an interchange where a supplier has to come out to the regional office to have a stack of tickets signed, and that type of physical interaction is no longer required. And frankly, field supervisors no longer have to go to the office to actually manage tickets. They can do it all digitally. They can all do it from home. And the pricing discussion related to that can happen virtually and instantaneously. So if there are issues around pricing, if there's frankly issues around scope and quantity, those can be resolved digitally online, and you don't have to basically to and fro and have a lot of interaction between supplier and operator. Also drives reduced administrative overhead. So we have the complete end-to-end process is ported. So the generation, coding, routing, price verification, and approval is all done digitally. So when you think about that, the type of operations that are being undertaken by a lot of the staff on both the supplier side and the operator side, they have to work remotely. They can do it all now. Every function associated with that process can be done from their home. So we're basically looking at this and saying, if you own this technology, this is part of your world. With these social distancing requirements coming on now, you can make far more effective use of people's time and energy by managing it all digitally. Thanks, Don. I'll pass it over to Don, and he's going to talk about workflow automation and some very specific things that we've done around OpenInvoice and OpenTicket and Pricebook to support that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. And so I'm going to bring the discussion around, more of the product and really what we are doing, because I've gone around and I've met several customers, obviously over the last year, and especially recently, and they all ask me is, we need to figure out ways to automate, and can you help us automate? So we've really directed our product development to help customers further automate that process, as Dave has mentioned. And I'm going to go through a few of the things that we've done. All right. Before I do that, though, I'd like to talk why are people think that there's a big need to automate. And if we look at our invoices on our system, we found out that majority of the invoices on the system are high volume, low dollar. In fact, over 80% of the invoices submitted are less than $5,000, and almost 90% are less than $10,000. So majority of the invoices that people are processing are really high volume, low dollar. So the high dollar invoices, people are spending a lot of time in really making sure they're correct, but there's a lot of invoices being submitted today that are these low dollar values. So how can we help with all the manual touches and all the manual controls around processing those invoices, and so you can do more with less and further automate? So some of the things that we've done recently with OpenInvoice, and especially with our OpenTicket customers, is use data that's being generated on those electronic tickets to actually auto route those invoices, so that there's not a human that has to look at data on it and actually manually do something with it. Have the system use the data on these documents to actually process, code, and route for approval, and maybe based on your controls, auto approve those invoices. So today, with the release last week, we're able to do that based on all kinds of data on the ticket, such as the person that approved the ticket, maybe the person that requisitioned the work, someone that's been identified as the office approver on the ticket, and then coming soon in the next release is actually the AFE or cost center owner. So if you assign that ticket to a particular AFE or cost center, it could actually route to that person automatically after everything's been reviewed. So really eliminate those steps of someone manually or using bots to route invoices around, have the system look at the data and do it. So this really enables auto coding and auto approvals. And if I go one step deeper, I'm going to show you how we're doing that. So within the invoice workflow rules that are set up, and if anyone's an OpenInvoice admin, you're familiar with the workflow rules, but just at a high level, this is kind of a screenshot of the rule that I've set up. And so you can put a lot of controls in so that things can get auto routed and auto code, but also meet your SOX compliance. So this rule here, I've specified a particular GL code or GL codes that only will walk through this auto coding and approval process. The ticket and invoice has to match my contract pricing, so that's Pricebook. So I have to have the document match my contract pricing. The ticket has to be approved, so it has to be electronically approved before submitted on the invoice. A ticket has to match the invoice, and with OpenTicket and OpenInvoice, that's one of the big value drivers, is that we're letting the system match the ticket lines to the invoice lines. You're not having to open up images of a ticket and make sure it matches that invoice. OpenTicket will do that matching for you. And so I have in my rule that the ticket has to match the invoice, and the ticket approver has financial authority. So whoever approved that ticket has DOA, and the invoice is less than $5,000. So if all these controls are met, the invoice can be submitted. It can be auto-coded because I put the coding on the ticket, and it can be auto-approved because of the rule with the ticket approver has enough financial authority to approve that invoice. So really quickly, what I'm going to do is just open up the application and show you what that would look like at the end state. So I'm not going to walk through the full demo for time constraints, but I'll log into OpenInvoice, and this is my test demo company. Permian EMP, and I'm going to pull up a particular invoice that followed those workflow rules. So I got my invoice here, and you can see right from the screen here, my ticket alert is green, so that means the ticket actually matches the invoice, and my Pricebook alert, so the invoice matches my invoice price there, my contract pricing. So if I click on the actual invoice, you can see in the journal what's happened. So it was submitted by the supplier. It ran my routing rules and routed to the ticket approver. It was code verified, so it met all my coding validation rules and code verified itself. And then based on the financial approval rules that I set in my workflow, it actually automatically approved it by the system. So basically, all the work was done on the ticket. It was validated. The work was confirmed. It was approved by an employee that had financial authority. Everything matched. So why do I have to look at this low dollar invoice moving forward? And just to show you, this had the ticket on it, and it has the one line that matches my ticket and invoice. And get back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this over to Jeff, because there's a lot of setup here and really looking at how we can automate things. And so Jeff's team is actually is going out and reaching out to customers and really helping with this process and using the tool. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
All right, thanks, Don. And as Don mentioned, if you are an administrator, you're familiar with the system, you already know how to set all of this up, then hey, more power to you. I highly encourage you to take advantage of these features. That you'll definitely see some benefits in your organization. But similar to what Don had mentioned earlier, we were speaking to a lot of our clients, and we were hearing some of the feedback that there are a lot of great features that people are not utilizing out of the application. And there were a couple of reasons why. Either people did not have the understanding or the expertise to configure these features within the application themselves, or they just simply didn't have the capacity to roll this out on their own. So what we did late last year is we actually listened to all of our clients, and we formed a team called the Virtual Admin Services team. And since then, we have had several clients that have taken advantage of this. And I wanted to talk through some of the benefits that we're starting to see from some of these clients. First thing I wanted to talk on was really kind of talking about what the virtual admin services, what you will be provided with this team. You're going to have access to our organization's most senior subject matter experts. What they'll do is they'll begin by evaluating your organization and understand what you're doing today and understand exactly how you're doing it. The team will propose a strategic approach and find ways to increase your efficiency and your productivity. And the main goal of this team is to really guide and instruct your organization, because what Chris mentioned earlier is that we want to partner with you. We want to see that success in your business. So one of the areas that we've been seeing a lot of interest in is really around the Pricebook administration. And the goal here is to really manage the strategic rollout and implement the best practices within your organization. We see a lot of companies that utilize the Pricebook, but they kind of piddle around in it a little bit. They don't take full advantage of the features. So what our team can do is we can work with you to train your suppliers to update those Pricebooks and find ways to maintain that accuracy. We can help monitor the invoice submissions for compliance. One of our clients that has taken advantage of this, we did some benchmark studies to understand where they were today, and they had worked tirelessly trying to implement the Pricebooks within their organization, and a lot of times they just didn't have time to focus in on it. And their main goal was, how much of our spend can we get coverage on through the Pricebook functionality? So when they started off, they'd done a great job. They were able to get up to 27%, but since then, we are now seeing them at 68% of their overall spend is covered by a Pricebook, and we're continuing to see that those percentages increase. And at the same time, while we're trying to get that coverage of spend, we're also looking at the compliance of the invoices. How can we look at the line items and the detail and find those line items that are out of compliance? And how can we work with the suppliers to understand why those line items are out of compliance, and how can we reduce the number of alert flags that we see that are not in compliance? And so what we've seen over time is they started off with about close to 16% of their line items were out of compliance, and now we're seeing that down to about 3.7%. And again, we're continuing to investigate ways to lower that number as much as possible. So seeing a lot of great results around the Pricebooks. Okay, Don? And then the next thing, really talking about where Dave was going with the social distancing and what Don was talking about with the automation. We're seeing this as a very common question of this stuff it's great information. Sometimes it can be a little confusing or complex to utilize if you're not in the system on a regular basis. So what we can do is we can help you develop those rules based on your business processes and the best practices. We work with over 400 E&P companies in the marketplace. We see a lot of success with these organizations, and we've identified what we feel are the best practices amongst those companies, and we can help share some of those best practices with your organization. We can also provide recommendations as new functionality becomes available. I'm sure that every time we have a release, people thoroughly read those release notes. But sometimes they're a little difficult to understand. So we'll walk through those and we'll make suggestions on some of the new releases that have come out and how you can better leverage that functionality. And then we'll establish rules to increase that straight through processing. So kind of going back to what Don was showing you, if a lot of that seems foreign to you and you don't have the capacity to really focus in on some of these business rules, ask us, the virtual admin team. They specialize in this area, and they can again, evaluate your organization, set this up. So if you are looking for ways to do the straight through processing based on if it's OpenTicket, if it's based on Pricebook, if it's based on a certain dollar authority, we can work with you on building those rules. So whenever those invoices come in, we'll automatically put that stamp of approval on there for you, and then you can continue to focus on those invoices that require a little bit more of your attention. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Tamara. She's going to talk about virtual cards and how the virtual cards can really help your organization as well.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So as Chris mentioned at the top, we've recently launched virtual cards, and we're excited to provide a payment solution to our operators or buyers that doesn't require much time and effort or financial investment, frankly, but instead provides a quick to implement option that reduces costs and provides revenue opportunity and frankly helps in these challenging times. So that said, let's dive into virtual cards a bit. So specifically, virtual cards provide operators, buyers an option to reduce costs. So organizations spend a significant amount of money on managing checks. So we've heard from various sources that it costs anywhere from $2 to $24 a check to manage a check through the process. And checks, by the very nature of them, being manual, are costly. So virtual cards introduces an alternative payment method that enables organizations to reduce check volumes and increase automation. Virtual cards also reduce fraud. So checks, again, by that manual nature, are a fraud risk to organizations. So over 1 million checks a day are forged in the United States. That's a pretty staggering amount, and just shows how vulnerable checks are to fraud. So by eliminating or reducing the associated processes, organizations can reduce costs by moving to virtual cards, which is a much more secure payment method. In addition, virtual cards enable organizations to save time. That's by eliminating and reducing manual payment. So you and your team can focus on value-added activities. Virtual cards also enable organizations to create a revenue stream. So this one's pretty exciting. As suppliers adopt virtual cards, operators earn rebates that are paid monthly. So instead of costing money like other payment methods, they're actually making money. So beyond that, and in these strange times we live in, virtual cards can also help you and your org work remotely. So the key there is getting away from manual processes and decreases the complexity of working away from the office, since a lot of those payments management processes move online. So now let's just talk a little more about virtual cards and how they work as a general payment method in case you aren't familiar. So virtual cards are essentially a way to pay suppliers via card. However, in this world, the card is not a physical plastic card, but entirely virtual. So it's available for single use. It has an expiration date, an exact amount. Those are just some of the key elements of the virtual card, but essentially, virtual cards provide more control, less fraud, while simultaneously providing suppliers an option to get paid faster when compared to a check process. So to support this specific offering, we're partnering with a provider to present a few offerings from experts in payments, which is why I'm happy to mention CSI or Corporate Spending Innovations. And you'll hear us reference them as CSI to provide the solution. So CSI is very experienced in the world of payments. They're considered a leader in the global electronic B2B payment space. Their team has, as you can see here, over 29 years of expertise in this world. They're also certified processors of MasterCard and Visa, which is in the virtual card world great because it provides a greater reach for virtual card programs. So by partnering with CSI, we and Enverus are providing solutions that help solve problems associated with the payment automation space. We do know that it's important that we consider the entire payments ecosystem to support virtual card conversion, but also to provide full payments automation for companies that are looking for a complete solution. So bottom line, we know that one size doesn't fit all organizations, so flexibility is key. And CSI provides that flexibility while also focusing on the customer experience and adoption. Advance one for me, Don. So to talk about adoption a little bit more and what CSI provides in this partnership. So some of you may have some familiarity with virtual cards. and some may be newer to the concept. But one of the biggest challenges in this space associated with virtual cards is supplier adoption. So this is primarily because a lot of the providers of virtual cards don't fully support a strong rollout to ensure buyers, operators maximize the reach of virtual cards. So this means that the operator misses out on rebate opportunities and just isn't able to maximize cost savings. So I can say confidently that we at Enverus know the importance of a strong enablement and onboarding process, because we live in the network world. It's mission critical that suppliers onboard and engaged. So it's great if you have a fantastic rebate defined, but if suppliers don't adopt, then it's essentially ineffective. And this is where our virtual card offering and program is highly valuable with CSI, because the goal is to take the burden load of managing a virtual card program off of the operators or the buyers. So in this program, we'll identify suppliers accepting cards today, plus support the continued effort to optimize rebate opportunities and reduce check volumes. So it's also important just to mention here that as a leader in the space and why we want to partner with CSI, it's because they offer a significant amount of experience, modern technology, global infrastructure to roll out, and frankly support a strong virtual card program. So all that to say, by working with us in CSI to roll out virtual cards, we want to provide operators the ability to receive direct rebate opportunities, realize cost savings without much time and effort for no financial investment. So that is our virtual card world. I think I'll hand it back to Susie for questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Tamara. So our first question here is, for the workflow approvals, how can a company protect themselves if a vendor has changed their name or remittance address? If the invoice itself is never reviewed, what is OpenInvoice doing to avoid this possible issue?
So in order for, I'll take that on, Susie, sorry. This is Don. So for an invoice, for a supplier to be enabled to transact onto the network, there is a control process around enabling that supplier with the proper remit to address and the supplier number back to the payment system. So therefore, they won't be able to submit that ticket or invoice using a different name or a different remit to address without that going through a formal process on the buyer side to set up that new name and remit to address ahead of time. Hope that answers it.
Perfect. This is an interesting question, and I'm not sure if we will have the answer, but I'm going to throw it out there to challenge you guys and see what you come back with. So somebody said, just curious, of the 1.19 billion in spend going through Pricebook, what is do we have any idea of what the ratio is of green alerts, yellow alerts, and blue alerts?
We do, but we're going to have to get back.
Follow up offline?
Yeah, no, we can certainly get that. Yeah, you bet.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yep. All right. See, I managed to stump you guys. You guys always have the answers for me. Okay, next question is about virtual cards. So why would suppliers adopt virtual cards, and what is the benefit to them?
Yeah, so the benefit from the supplier's perspective is, as there's kind of there is a faster payment, right, when compared to other payment processing timelines. Additionally, it's a more secure payment, just as we talked about the fraud piece on the operator side, that exists on the supplier side as well. And also, detailed remittance information is provided for easy reconciliation, and that's an important one from the supplier's perspective. And in a lot of cases, as the programs unfold, operators look at suppliers that are leveraging virtual cards as a preferred vendor status. And so that's advantageous from the supplier's perspective as well. But the key things, of course, is getting that payment quickly, security, and that detailed remittance piece is vital. So we know a lot of suppliers accept them and find them valuable today. So those are kind of the key things when we think about the benefits from the supplier standpoint.
Excellent. All right, next question is on the virtual admin services. So is there a cost associated with elevating the maturity of Pricebooks on the operator side through the virtual admin services team?
So this is Jeff, I can take that one. So there typically is a subscription that can be signed up, and you can leverage that based on however much you think you need to utilize the application. And we'll work with each individual organization to determine what that usage capacity would look like. I will say, however, that we are offering the service at no cost for the next 30 days. We know that this is a difficult time for organizations. We want you to take advantage of some of these features that we have presented today. So if this is something that you are interested in, sign up now. We can, we'll help you through this for the next 30 days, and there's no obligation to sign up for anything afterwards. So highly encourage you to just check it out, see how we can help out.
Okay, Jeff, perfect. And how can they get some more information on it?
They can either reach out to their account director, or Susie, I don't know if we have our contact information out there or not, or if there's a certain central location where they're reaching out to people.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think, Don, if we can just fast forward a slide here, we can put the contact information up. There we go. Okay, so if you want to get some information on anything that you see here, you can either reach out to your account director if you know who that contact is. You can call us at the phone number, or you can email us at businessdevelopment@enverus.com, and we can take care of you, answer your questions, or route you to the right contact. Okay, now I have another question. Right now, the automation is being used by the buyer. Is there a way that we can help suppliers become more automated with their accounts receivable?
Jeff, I don't know if you want me to take that or.
Go ahead. Dave, were you gonna say
So
something?
yeah, I was gonna say, so for the automation side, we are currently we have Supplier Link, if you haven't heard of that, and that is being able to connect your AR system up with OpenInvoice or and submit those invoices directly from your AR system without rekeying it. And coming up this summer, there's going to be a total relaunch and make it even more robust on the automation side to further automate your side of the business from so there's no rekeying of data whatsoever. And if, of course, you can reach out to this contact that Susie has provided here if you need more information on it. But the service is called Supplier Link as far as how to automate your side of the business.
Yeah, and I apologize. Don hit unmute before I did. Sorry, I had struggled with my mute button there. But this is Tamara on the product side. I can say, yeah, we're excited to just as Don said, provide additional values in the automation specifically for suppliers. More information coming on that in the near future. So we are definitely doing that and excited to announce more details very soon.
Tamara, this next question is for you on virtual cards. So do operators have to pay to use virtual cards?
Yeah, good question. So the virtual card program doesn't require the operator to pay for the program. So the operator is going to work with Enverus CSI with minimal time investment to get a program in place, and then CSI works directly with the suppliers to go through the conversion process from payment method perspective. So the operator does not need to pay, but rather earn rebates off of the success of the program.
Excellent. All right, troops, do we have any more questions that you'd like to plug into the questions panel? Going once.
Well, actually, Susie,
going
I do.
Twice. Oh.
The previous Pricebook question. Yeah, the
oh, yeah.
question. Yeah, how much of that spend through Pricebook was green alert, yellow alert, blue alert, pardon me, or red alert? So 63%, and this is of approved invoices. So these are of invoices that have gone through the system, been Pricebook validated, and the result in terms of approval is such. So 63% had green alerts, so there is no issue with the Pricebook. 26% were basically off contract, so the or off Pricebook. So the good or service associated with that particular invoice, even though there was a Pricebook reference to the invoice itself, that particular item wasn't on contract. 10% were actually under contract. So there's no real contract related for whatever reason, but it's the those of you that work with Pricebooks know that that's the blue alert. So that leaves only 1%, and this is we actually have found this pretty interesting. 1% of red flagged items on an invoice are actually approved for payment. So virtually everything else, which gets caught up in the Pricebook and there is a red flag, will get disputed back to the supplier. Resolution around the pricing worked out and then sent in. So in very few cases is there justification for the supplier to essentially come up with a different pricing for a good or service than that what was actually found within the Pricebook.
It's very interesting. Thanks for finding that, Dave. We do have another question on Supplier Link. Does the Supplier Link integrate? Is it compatible with OpenTicket?
Great question. So that is part of what we're looking at for Supplier Link. So as we launch it, we'll be looking at some compatibility, but and continuing down that path as we provide something to suppliers. So yeah, and we do want to get, I think one thing I will mention on that just in general for Supplier Link, as I mentioned, more information coming soon. We'll be providing more details on what is included. The idea is to provide some automation. In addition to that, greater value from a supplier's perspective on a visibility standpoint. So there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline for Supplier Link, and we're going to provide kind of a robust overview of what we're specifically launching as we go forward with Supplier Link.
Thanks, Tamara. Anybody else? If you have any questions, feel free to type them in. All right, so as we mentioned, you can reach us several different ways. So if you had any questions about what you saw here or just ways that you can make your everyday processes more efficient, just contact us. We're happy to help. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you guys found this content helpful and valuable to your everyday work. And keep an eye out. We're trying to send useful, valuable content to you. We want to try to help our customers through this difficult time. We're all in this together. So also keep an eye out for the replay of the session in your email inbox tomorrow. And I don't see any more questions that have come in. So with that, we will say until next time, thank you for joining us. And please stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks, guys.